was.
All loaded up. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the HPC to order. If you feel free to grab I think there should be copies of the agenda in the back of the room if you'd like to. Please make note of the mission of the HPC that's located at the bottom of the agenda. And we will carry forth with approval of the consent agenda from the August 20th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, will show that the consent agenda has passed for the previous meeting, and we can immediately launch into new business. I will first off state that we have a new commissioner. Mike Archiaga is with us, so we're very excited to have him on board. Thank you for your service. As I call each of the properties up, if you would approach the bench, state your name and address for the record, and then give us a brief outline of your certificate of appropriateness, and then we can open them for discussion. First item on the agenda is 808 Rivermont Avenue.
My name is Greg Vince. I reside at 1450 Langhorne Road, and I'm just trying to want to restore that window to its original condition so it reflects the house at 816 Rivermont Avenue.
Excellent. Commissioners, want to have a discussion on that?
Well, I'll lead off since that's in my part of Lynchburg. I don't think the original window would have been a solid plate glass window or whatever, and I think it would be inappropriate on that house. There is a solid window on the house referenced at 816, but it's not appropriate either in my judgment.
As in, it would probably not have been original?
No.
I mean, I'll restore it to whatever the original was. I'm just using that as an example because I thought that might be the original one, but if it's not, whatever you see fit.
I'm all in favor of restoring it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I just want something there besides a big board in the window.
And is the second image the 16?
This is
Yes.
816
Okay.
Yep.
with the window replaced with
It's just a
pane.
single window instead of double hung.
And
I
it's-
think it would have been a double hung.
Yeah.
Yeah. 816 is in sad shape.
Yeah, it is.
808
Yep,
is in much better
Sort of.
shape.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to restore it back to a double hung 6/6. Is that window to the left what was originally, is that an original window? You
That
don't
The
know?
right there?
one with panes,
The one-
6
that-
panes.
I mean, it's my understanding, yes. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely very old.
But you can see, Richard, the one to the adjacent to it looks like an
It's
808.
right.
Well, so the one to the left, that piece, unfortunately, I don't know who did that, but that's a piece of plexiglass. Like, it's, yeah. I mean, I would like to actually fix that one too, if
Yeah.
possible.
I
It's
think
definitely-
it
Well, wait a
was
minute. Now,
6
downstairs, you got
Mixture.
202.
There's a wild mixture.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there are 202s.
You know, I would think that house probably had 2/2. Do you know what we mean when we say 2/2? What we're referring to? It's two panes. See that window where the arrow is? See, you have two panes of glass on that top sash and two at the bottom. You only have one muntin in the middle. Yeah, that right there.
Okay.
So that's two panes over two panes.
Gotcha.
So I move that you restore the front window.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, this is a tough one.
Yeah. you got a
Could have been
mixture.
6/6 on the top and
You
just
know-
different stuff, Richard.
Do we have a picture of the other side of that? Is there a 6/6 over that one?
No.
You might be able to see it from the Google like Street View, or maybe that one photo right there, and the third
There it
one.
is.
There you go.
Oy vey.
Can anyone see what that is?
That might be two
Doesn't
over
look like a
two.
6/6.
I don't think there's
Single
another
over
6
single.
over 6
It's just
there.
1/1.
Yeah. It's had all kinds of things.
You know, DHR would probably
Hodgepodge.
say to put 1/1,
Probably so, on the big one in the front.
don't you think?
I agree.
Maybe they tell you to put a
gotta
single
press that
page.
for anything,
Okay, let me revise my motion here. I move that it be restored back to the original height, or the original dimensions,
Okay.
double hung 1/1 sash, and wood window or aluminum clad.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That sounds good
I
to me.
second it.
Okay, any further discussion from the commission?
Good.
How do you determine the original dimension?
That's probably there.
Yeah,
Okay, just
just
what's-
the
what's within
original
that
framing
existing
aspect
frame.
of it,
Back to the jam.
if that board is
Okay.
taken out, yeah.
Yeah, because when the inside, the frame's all there, I think it's Ann? Ann?
That's me.
Was it you?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that clear? Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, we'll probably go with wood, just like the other ones are.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that'd be great.
And then, the other window that you were talking about, to the left of that one, that's like plexiglass now, it almost seems like, I have no idea, that actually goes, I could be wrong, but it was almost like it was a step out to that little ledge at one time, or it was some kind of door, because it goes all the way to the ground, I believe. It's really strange, and they put like a piece of plexiglass there.
Mhm.
And I didn't even think about putting that in the original request, but it might be something we want to look at, because it is just a piece of plastic, like a plexiglass, it's not even, and they just kind of like caulked it in there, it's
Hmm.
pretty bad. So,
Is that something you could approve administratively once we
Oh.
deal with this one?
What is it you would do?
that other window to the left, I can give you some more photos, but it's not even a glass. I don't know if it was shattered at one time, they just stuck a piece of plastic in there.
Yeah, if you were just to replace it with glass.
Glass,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, shows is passed. You are free to window it up. Thank you very much. All right, next property we have is 920 Federal Street.
I'm waiting for his more coming up. It's not. I did not meet with the homeowner, but I did visit the house. The rear is not visible from the street. I mean, the side street, the rear street, this is obviously from there's a little alley behind it, but it would not seem to be an issue because of its visibility.
Okay. Sir, if you would state your
My
name
name
again.
is Saunders. I reside at 920 Federal Street.
Excellent.
And as you can see, the original, or not original, but the current cedar siding has started to fail. Matter of fact, I had to put the scaffolding up because the piece blew off 2 rows from the top. So that's why the scaffolding is up there, so I could fix that until. And when I was up there, I noticed that it's just deteriorating. It's starting a lot of cracks, and I'd like to just replace it, make it look nice again. I found a product at Lowe's that's a wood composite. I think he's got it up there. I'd keep the same 4-inch reveal that I have, and just looking for a.
All right. You would like to make a motion on that?
Federal.
You have a question?
He's replacing some siding in the back, but you can't see it from the front.
Oh, you're replacing the whole thing?
The whole back, yeah. He's going to do the whole back.
And the house is in good shape.
Yeah, I would move it be allowed due to its lack of visibility.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
You paint it to match.
Yes.
It's existing.
Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, you are free to begin the work.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We
You have a good
appreciate you
day.
coming in. Next item on the agenda is 317 Cabell Street. regarding a driveway installation. Hello there.
Drew Stafford, 317 Cabell. We just want to put in some off-street parking because we're right there at the corner of Cabell and D. It's quite busy and I have children. So hoping to get the cars back there. Originally, it was one whole piece of property. 310, there used to be a small store there. It was demolished and eventually the city got those two pieces of property, 308, 310. So two options. One option is if you look right there at Mr. Boyd Kuhn's house, the 405, the Dabney Scott Adams mansion right there, right across the street on D Street, they already have a driveway. So one option would be putting in a driveway directly across from them into my backyard. It'd be a bit smaller because that's like a commercial driveway from when it used to be the Opportunity House. But maybe if you flip through the pictures, there's an old historic wall. It's a knee wall. Actually, it's not quite. It's
Oh, you're talking about this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, that one, the first option there. There it is. Yeah, that's my very unhelpful picture of my tape measure. You can barely see, but yeah, that's like a 3 foot, 2.5 foot wall, something like that. So I'd have to disturb that. Also, I know that there's some main sewer lines coming from the Adams house, the one next to mine, 315 Cabell. So I'm nervous about doing anything right there, and because it's the first thing you see when you come into the neighborhood, and just that wall. So that's the first option, though. That's an option, and then there's
Plus you have a major curb cut there too.
yeah, it would require
Right.
quite a bit of work. Yeah, it's a big step up right there. So then the second option is that which you just flip to behind there, the city-owned property. So right now that's like an entrance to Daniels Hill. To the right, there's a little bit of space. I talked to some folks in Public Works, and they said a driveway needs to be about 14 feet wide minimum, or I think it was 12 feet actually, but give or take 1 or 2 feet on either side to cut it in. So that's kind of what I would need to remove right there. My property starts just to the left of that chain link fence. So I'd put a driveway in right there. And it would, oh, go ahead.
So how far from the chain link fence is your property?
Right where the tape is right there, about 3 feet off to the left. So if you flip, there's some closer picture. Yeah, I guess it was the one that you were just at. Oops, sorry. Keep going back.
So you'd have to take out about 3 foot of the wall?
So there's a couple different things. Number one, well, it's more than that. It's probably about 5 feet, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's a stacked stone wall. It's not an original wall. It's just when they put in that Welcome to Daniels Hill area, they took that stacked stone and just kind of stacked something up. So I'd want to take the stacked stone and just turn it in, and then have the driveway there. It doesn't take any of the main landscaping out. There's some weeds that have become trees that need to be taken out, but the magnolias and all the flowering plants would still be there. So the driveway would be sort of hidden.
So how wide is that? How wide is your lot?
That whole lot that the city owns, it's probably...
Well, it looks like, yeah, that one. So it looks like the property line. Go back to
that's
the
a lot
one
further.
before that.
Check that out.
So we can actually measure it.
Oh, you can't?
Yeah, I'm not sure how
What can't
wide,
you do?
how wide it is entirely. So one other thing I'll point out while she's measuring it, that knee wall that you see on D Street, it actually makes a 90-degree angle to form the back of my property. So I'd have to take a portion of that out too. It's not visible from the street, but just full disclosure.
Do you have any drawings that we could see? Because there's a stop sign back here at the corner of D and Hancock and a street light. And I couldn't figure out where
Yeah,
you
I
would.
think there's some confusion. If you go back to that, oh, you can see the length there.
That's 13-ish feet.
Yeah, that's about what it would take. You can kind of see
So the
from there.
wall continues over.
Right, it's about where that second dot is almost.
So-
Yeah,
But there's also a wall back here too.
Yeah. Right, that's the historic wall back there. But if you go back, can you go back to one of those pictures? So just to be clear, yeah, there's what do you mean by the stop sign? I'm sorry.
There's a stop sign at the corner of Hancock and D Street,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
also a street light. And that's why I'd like to see exactly
Oh, it's not even, I don't know if I'm allowed to. It's all
you
the
can
way
go.
off.
Yeah,
it's
I
all the
know
way off
where
to
it
the
is.
left. So
Yeah.
if you go back into the picture I took,
Tight to the fence, Sean.
right, that one right there. Yeah. So that's it. That's what the driveway would be. Can you see that yellow tape on the ground? It's not a great picture.
So it'd just
Yeah.
be basically taking out that strip of trees right up through to your backyard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's your property right there, though, too,
sir.
correct?
No,
Is
it
it not?
So the city owns the back two lots,
lots.
308 and 310. They own those two lots. So there's a whole, I realize this is a very first initial step.
Uh-huh.
They said to come see y'all first, so we can figure out what makes the most sense according to like the historic preservation of the hill. But once I do that, I have to go to Public Works and survey, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's involved, and they have to talk to purchasing about me purchasing a piece of the city's property there. So there's a lot I have to do still.
I think your first step would be to hire a landscape architect
Okay.
so that he can basically show how that wall would be curved in, what the slope of the driveway would be, what wall on your property would have to be taken out, basically show what's being kept plant-wise, material-wise, what has to be removed, and really just give you a drawing of the whole thing. He doesn't have to get too detailed at this point. You know, tell him that, yeah, you may have to get detailed a little bit more once it's approved, but to give you the basic layout of what you'd be doing so that, which you'd need anyway, because then you're going to have to go to the city and say, okay, look, this is the chunk of land
Yeah, the
that I would,
dimensions.
because you're not thinking of buying those, is it just, it's those two
They'd have to
little parcels in the back, correct? So you'd only want to buy a chunk of that,
Right.
right where
Yep,
you need
right
the
there.
driveway.
Yeah, they're
So
gonna have
you'd
to
have to
divide it.
determine, you know, if that, for instance, is 30 feet and you need 12 feet, then you need, 18 feet.
Sure.
You know,
So
and
before Mr.
so-
Stafford goes to the expense of having this surveyed and
Yeah.
designed, I think he's just looking for a little bit of direction as to whether you guys would be open. to
Yeah, I think we'd be,
Hancock Street driveway
well, that's-
versus the B Street.
yes, that's what we're getting at. I think this is a much more viable option, I think, for you also.
Right.
I think the concern would be to maintain the entrance to Daniels Hill and that landscaping in the historic wall, well, it's not historic, but,
Right.
the
No, I
stack
agree.
wall. And such, if you're taking out 5 feet of that wall, well, you're going upgrade a little bit anyway, so you can just turn that wall back in and use the same 5 feet
Yeah.
and go into the side with it,
That's the whole.
into your driveway, and then create what you need to create there. So,
Yeah, and I realize there may be another step to this where I get a design or something and come back and say, hey, is this acceptable? But before anybody in the city, I talked to like 3 or 4 different people, would touch it, they said, go see the HPC first
well,
and make sure
yeah.
it's an option.
And I think, well, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I mean, I'm open to it.
Yeah.
I'm the advocate, I live in the neighborhood, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. I see you there, I see you have to park across the street, you got kids, they have to
Right.
cross the street with you, so
Right.
it's not the safest thing. So I think that would certainly be an alternative.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
would you guys recommend the Hancock Street entrance as opposed to the D Street entrance?
Yes, and we'd also have to see exactly beyond that, what you're doing in your yard too.
Right, yeah, because they gave, the Public Works gave me a whole, Jason Ingram, I think is his name over there, he gave me a whole application where I have to fill out all that stuff according to code and design everything. So, yeah.
And I don't think there's a sidewalk there, so you don't have to do
Yeah, that's what's nice about that option. There's no
is
sidewalk.
there a curb there?
There's a curb.
Yes, there
So
is.
you would still have to probably get a curb cut there.
Right.
So that's all, I mean, that's the stuff, that's the technical stuff that you have to maybe do later, but if you can get the initial,
It is great.
so you don't have to spend a fortune on it, just kind of get
Right.
what would satisfy us aesthetically. We understand that you've got to have a curb cut. He doesn't have to do all those details now. You may not even have to do those details because
Okay.
there's standards from the city
Okay.
that they give you for that sort of thing. So, yeah, if you could do that, show the landscaping, how that's going to be affected,
Right.
what's going to be taken out, what might be new. You may have to take some of these out, and he may say, the landscape architect may say, well, you've got to take these out, they're too big, so you can replant them with this.
Right.
So that sort of thing.
Okay. That's helpful.
So, does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
So I'll move to table this? Do you-
You can only table it one
Right.
meeting, right?
Right. What's your timeline on getting this back to us?
I mean, I'd like to do it as soon as possible. It didn't always work that way, so I don't know how long it's going to take. with
Right.
The city.
It's no way it'll move through the whole process.
They made it sound like it was going to, because they have to get this purchasing involved. They have to divide the property, and they have to determine how much they're going to sell it to me for. Hopefully, a dollar.
Oh, right. I was thinking you guys could probably issue a COA with a full design, but maybe it should go through the sale through city council
Yeah,
first.
what I'm proposing is that he comes up
With the
with a
design.
design, bring it back here, so we can.
Then
we
you may
can-
want to deny it just based on the fact that you don't have a full application, you need more information, and then you'll make a new application
Yeah, because
when you're ready.
I'm just kind of getting an okay that I could do that, so that when I talk to the city, I can say, hey, they said it's cool if I pursue this.
You ever heard of it?
Your motion could be
Some kind of
denied
approval?
based on more
Well,
information, but
basically.
approve the idea.
All right, so I move that it be denied upon a landscape plan being submitted for approval.
Okay.
The concept of entering through Hancock Street would be the preferable choice through the two city-owned lots.
And what specifically are you all interested in seeing? Materials, layout? Because landscaping is not really subject to HPC review.
Well, if they're,
But what he's
I think if they're
removing.
taking out landscaping, we have to see what he's
Okay.
replacing it with.
And I guess the wall that's to be removed further back at the edge of his property, right?
Right, well, that would be all covered, that would be included in the landscape plan. Yeah, so anything,
I'm hoping to use that as part of it. Just fold it into the driveway, sort of use it as a wall to the left. That historic wall in the back. My goal is to just kind of,
Fold both of them in.
fold them both in.
What's the height of that? About 2.5 feet?
That one there, yeah, right about 2.5.
And then you've got all that ground above. It's going to be a significant amount of grading going back through there. You might even have to have a retaining wall on your side by that chain link fence too. That'll be up to your landscape architect to
Yeah,
figure
once I
out.
get someone
but
out
that's
there
a lot
to give me
of
yeah.
that's a lot to move right there.
The Lynchburg Historic Foundation did this stack wall as an entrance to Diamond Hill.
yeah, so we'd want to maintain that.
Yeah.
How much oversight do we have with regard to landscape? I don't.
Yeah, so-
Maybe not so much, but a driveway we do.
Right. That's why layout and material of the driveway is subject to your review, but not landscaping. This is a little different because it's actually city landscaping, not
Yeah.
private landscaping. So you'll want to see what the effects are on city property, but there's no ability to dictate, what kind of materials Mr. Stafford could use on
Right.
his property.
And if it
Yeah.
goes through, it'll wind up being my property, actually.
Yeah.
You just want
Right.
the driveway?
Is that actually, will that still be a historic, because the way it works is, like we just saw with the guy over in Federal Hill, and even here, like the back of these houses, are you, like even 315 Cabell right there, do you have say kind of over what fence he's using back there, even though it's
If it's
historic?
visible, see, the one we just approved is not visible from the street. There's no back alley, nothing, I
Right.
assume, right?
Right.
No, visibility doesn't dictate what HBC has purview over. It might change what the requirements are for the building. So
Well, I guess I'm asking.
But the
since-
chain link
since-
fence next door was there.
Oh, no, I know
before
that.
the
Right.
I'm just trying to get an idea. So, like this Hancock Street right here is not it's not part of the historic district at all. What the historic district is like Cabell, D Street coming up to Cabell. So what I'm asking is what's on that street? Once that becomes my property, like I want to maintain the historic. Like I'm interested in that. Obviously, I moved into the neighborhood for a reason. But does that become once it goes through and city council votes and it's my property? Is that also subject to?
yeah, it's
the historic commission.
Okay.
And it will remain within the
Okay.
district. Yep.
Okay.
So I think the district boundary is that edge of Hancock
Okay, that's
Street.
where it starts. Okay, cool. Okay, that's fine.
All right.
Sounds good.
Do we have a second for
I second
motion?
it.
All right. Any other discussion on it?
We'll make
Questions?
sure because I think your motion had more landscaping words in it than it sounds like Ann says we have.
It's reasonable for you guys to be concerned about the public landscaping. We can't dictate what Mr. Stafford's private landscaping will look like.
So it may want to be, Richard, that any landscaping disturbed in the current city-owned property, that the city is doing it back correctly around the entrance sign to the historic district. But that won't be Mr. Stafford's because, I mean, in essence, he'll own the driveway, but he won't own the corner where the sign is and where the landscaping is.
Well, no, you're right, but and what I was referring to is the landscaping right adjacent to his property, which he may own or not own, depending on where the cutoff is.
Yeah.
So in that case, I think in this particular case, we have to be concerned about the landscaping because it could either be on the city or private, we don't know yet. So we'd want to see how that all is going to lay out, I guess.
So the bottom line is the motion says not now because we don't have enough information, but it sounds like yes. The idea is yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that when we're hearing it?
But the key is not to remove more than 5 or 6 feet of the wall.
Yeah,
Have
the
it
basic thing is.
Minimal.
curved back in, yeah.
We approve it, I mean, we approve the concept of the rear entry on, what street is that?
Hancock.
Hancock, subject to more information, landscape plan.
Yeah. All right, we had a motion and a second. Any other discussion, gentlemen? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, it passes, so we look forward to seeing what plan comes up with.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Good luck with working with the city on that.
Let me correct myself. I heard you guys whispering. The boundary for the local district is actually on the D Street Bridge, so this is well within it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I believe the state national district has that as a boundary. But the local one continues.
All right.
So those two empty lots across the street, all the way to C Street, are also on it.
I'm sure that yes.
All right, let's see. The next item we have on the agenda is regarding the Virginia School of the Arts. No address listed. I guess it's just the main building.
How we go?
Gentlemen?
Site manager, Ms. Namro, owner.
Address.
2244 Vermont Avenue. We're here today to get some windows approved. We brought Chrissy in from Pella. We've been working with them for the last few weeks, getting their architectural series there. We don't plan on changing any of the sizes, any shapes, any dimensions. All we're doing is strictly taking those out because they are all vinyl windows right now.
Really?
All vinyl.
So nothing is original?
Nope.
Oh, my word.
Wow.
Nope. So, since we have a federal tax credit involved in this, we have to meet federal guidelines which say, at all possibilities, save the windows. Exactly what it says. We can't save any of them because they're all vinyl, they're all junk, they're falling out on everybody. It was really a bad idea whenever they were stuck in. They're not even sealed shut or anything. So, without further ado, y'all want to see what windows are going in there, right? This is Chris. He's representative from Pella. I'm going to let him take over.
So I just brought in, I know you mentioned earlier, just all the window along with the flat product. So the window that we're suggesting for this application is just our architectural series. And this is a beat up example that I had with me. But it gives you a clear understanding of what it product is. Solid wood clad window. There's just the claddings on the exterior, and it'll be whatever color it needs to be on the outside. Historically accurate, being have more of a attention to detail the profile that's around. This is an OG profile around the glass and the cladding and the wood on the interior. The bottom rail is about 3 inches. That's more what gives it historically accuraciness, whole wood windows. So, any questions, concerns about the product?
You done any past research as to what was there before the vinyl?
Who looked at this?
Oh, there was old wood windows in there originally from even going back to some of the original windows that the architect had. You really can't tell what they are. And being that there's no original windows in there.
Photographs?
All the photographs we've seen have been from these.
Yeah. I mean, we went back to, he sent some pictures, the architect did, said, from back when the school was first done, but you can't tell nothing. I mean, you can't even zoom in back in because it's not an original picture, but, you know, even then, you really couldn't tell what they were. Because they were so far away, taking a picture of the big
But
one.
we're not
like
changing
that.
any of the dimensions, any of the openings.
Yeah, I think openings, you're probably correct. The bigger one was, just like we had the discussion earlier, were they 1/1s like they are now versus multi-pane?
Well, the bad thing is that all these windows are different.
Yeah, we have, say, for example, you have some that are 9 feet tall that are double hung, and then on the back side, there's some with just pane glass and then double hung windows
The
underneath.
transom over top of them, so.
Yeah.
And I guess they did that as a reason of cost savings when they did replace the windows. But on the side of the property, there are some that are still that 9 feet tall. And then the next back section is
Yeah, all those windows right there are 9 feet tall.
like 7.5.
Yeah.
And then there's a transom over top of them to make up that 9 feet dimension.
So, Emmett, did you look at this? Who looked at this one?
Yeah, I did look at, but the big thing I wanted to see was the DHR comments.
Yeah, DHR basically, I mean, I read it straight down. It wants you to repair, replace in all possible means to replace the original windows.
No, we understand that portion. I think what,
Have you already had a part 2 submitted to DHR?
Yeah, and actually, there's only 2 type of windows we can use. All solid wood or flat. That comes down from the federal.
and I
That's what they
assume
told us.
this window meets their standards?
Yes, sir. It does.
And did they have any comment about fenestration, about the size of the panes, anything on that? Nothing?
Yeah, we're just, all we keep hearing is put it back the way it came out.
Okay. And so the part 2 submittal had 1/1s shown, and so that's what they have approved? Okay.
It does not say we have to do double hung or single hung, just they have to meet the guidelines.
Now, is the wood remaining
The
between
wood is
the windows?
remaining,
On the outside.
correct.
So, okay. And so you're putting these windows back in the same exact dimensions?
No new openings, no new
Yep.
Same openings?
Yeah, they're actually making them to fit so that all we do is unscrew them, fold them in, put these right back out, level them up, screw them up, and that's it.
All custom made?
Yep.
Yeah.
for the most part.
Don't worry, it's got a custom price to it too. Yeah, we're not like, because we didn't.
Every window's, there's no standard size window, so. But so on some of the 9-foot ones, it was, we have to use in one of our beefier series called a monumental double hung because a 9 feet tall operational window. Same identical profile as this, it's just a little beefier to support extra weight. But
Well, I move,
Yes.
since you have no original windows left, apparently, I move to approve the application as submitted, provided it meets the Secretary of the Interior's standards.
An existing opening size.
Well, that would be.
And that would be per
That
that.
would be covered in that.
Yeah.
Don't forget about the sign. That was another portion.
Yeah, another portion was that we want to take down the
It's gone.
It's already gone.
It's gone.
Whether or not you all took it down or.
That mine in, no, we actually have, we've already had break-in, tools stolen and stuff like that, so we're having to take other means, and it's a shame too, because, I mean, we boarded up the windows, and it just doesn't look appealing right now, but we're getting there.
2 more weeks it'll look.
We do. Yeah, we got more security stuff coming in too, just to keep there, more than we've got a lot of stuff going on there, so I think we'll have less of that happening, but
Is the new.
maybe they went over there, I don't know, we'll just see if they land on the ground. But we'll find,
Is the new entity going to be the Virginia School of the Arts condos?
Those who the Garland Rose lofts.
Yeah. So obviously, the Virginia School of the Arts sign, you don't anticipate going back up.
And actually, Historic told us we did not need to keep the sign because the original was the Garland Rose School of
Okay.
So it'd be the Garland Roads lost or the Garland Roads school lost. I don't, that one's too wordy. So
How large
Y'all
are
don't
they?
plan on putting any signage back up, do you?
not up there, no.
Okay.
No.
What's the average unit size?
Anywhere between 800 and 1,200 square feet.
That's
Some
big-
are a little bit smaller.
That's
Some-
bigger than a loft.
Yeah, but they're living home office.
Actually, really, in the backside, I mean, you can't see it from here, but there's one in the third floor that almost 20 feet tall
18-foot ceilings.
and 18-foot ceiling, and we've been able to, the old metal tin design, we're able to keep them in that room right there. So we're using a lot of the designs that we can, and a lot of, like the hallway specifically, we have to be almost exactly what they look like when it was original. So,
There's a lot of other features of the back end.
so, but yeah.
For the windows, we're gonna do the spoon locks too, so like traditional style spoon locks, and we'll have sash lifts still as well, just to be historically accurate on the inside of the product. So
Nice. Great.
Did we get everything in?
So you need to amend to talk about the sign. Since it's already gone, I think it's a moot point, but
All right.
Well, I approved it as submitted, so that, was the sign in there?
Yeah, it was. It was to be removed, yeah.
So that would cover that.
And I think, did you second that? Or did we have a second?
I will. I don't
Okay.
think I did.
Any
I
other
will.
discussion on this COA? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed?
It's exciting
Great work,
to
guys.
see
Great.
something
We're excited to
happen.
see that happen.
some say they want that BSA sign.
I'm so glad to see something
Brutus will
happen.
get it done fast.
$12 for it.
All right, next property we have on tap is 1711 Rivermont Avenue.
Is this the right plan?
No, not the other one.
Is that the correct plan? No, it's the other
Got the
one.
other one.
Yeah, we had some
That's the
revisions.
back. An addition on the back.
There we go. There should be an elevation in the back. There we go. Yep, that's correct. So my name is Elizabeth Sheehan, and I purchased 1711 Rivermont Avenue last month, and I'm looking to put in a second-story addition, specifically a shed dormer on the back of the roof with 3 windows. Our intent is to match the windows as closely as possible to what's already existing. And the dormer itself is about 17 feet long, I believe.
Between 17 and 20 feet, yes.
And we are also planning on replacing the shingles because they've deteriorated with regular architectural shingles, which was probably an improvement of what was there previously. It was asphalt shingles previously.
It has the 3-tab shingles on it, so she was hoping to put the architectural and make it look better. It is in the back of the property. I don't think we have an alleyway there. The roof
No.
pitch should be right at 412, maybe a little bit more, but she has a bonus room up there already, roughed-in plumbing for a bathroom on the far end.
All right.
That part of the house can't be seen from the street. The house is on a double lot, so to the left is a vacant lot, which is just consists of my driveway and some landscaping.
Do you know what the current roof pitch is of that house?
It is an 812, if I'm not mistaken, sir. It's 8 or 912.
Yeah, that I drove by it, and that's exactly what you see right there. You'd maybe be able to see a little bit of peeking up around the top of that the
So
addition
this-
that's already
Yeah.
there. It
You're
would be
on what
behind
street?
that.
That view is
That's on Grayson.
Yeah.
That's on Grayson, looking at it, and when you're on, I forget the name of the road that's behind
Early Street.
Early Street. When you're on Early Street, you have to look through so many trees and houses and garages, you don't see the back of their house from there. It's too far away. But yeah, even from that angle, you'd probably just see a little bit of the peak of the dormer would maybe just be visible over the top of that. But
So you're looking through 3 lines.
with the roof, no, I mean from Grayson even looking at it, you just see you would just, the way I envisioned it, you'd just see it peeking out from behind that other
It's very woody.
addition.
So which house is it?
This
Right
one
there,
here.
1711.
And I own the lot to the left of that.
Huh.
Is there a side view of that house again? It looked like that roof had a much steeper pitch than 812. That looks like a 1212 at least. Are you sure that's only 812?
I'm not positive. It's between that and a 10. I don't think it's a 12, but it could be.
Well, here it looks a little different.
Okay.
I guess it's the way the picture was taken. Is there any pictures to the side of the actual side?
Right. Well, right there was one.
That's close enough.
If
There
you
was
could- if-
there was one a little further on that. Wasn't there another picture that was on Gracie Street looking at it? Through the trees.
If you have access to Zillow,
Right
you could get, the house was just listed. If you entered it in, you'll see tons of outside property photos, if you wanted to.
And see, it would almost be,
Yeah,
it would almost
Zillow
be
and then
obscured by that.
1711
That's so fine. You don't have
Rivermont.
to do that. Yeah, that's fine. All right. No. Let's see the side elevation again. Okay.
So you wouldn't even be able to see the side of it. You would only see roof and then the roof above that addition.
Where's the plan of it? Let me see the plan.
It's scroll up and yeah, that's the upstairs plan. That one right there. Yep, that's the plan.
Can we enlarge that one? So what is that little room to the left?
That was just going to be office closet space, like a retreat.
Is it possible? So that, what is this, like a master bedroom you're doing?
That's a master bedroom. Yep. Those are closets towards the back, and then to the far right was the bathroom. And then we're not going to touch that space that comes out as the L part of the L part. We're going to leave that all original. We're not going to touch that space. It's not worth. The pitch of the roof is so low there. It's not
It's
worth
pretty
finishing.
narrow. Yeah.
Okay, well, okay, never mind. Who looked at this one?
It would be me. I guess I could make a motion on it. I move that the application be submitted as approved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I don't know if you're supposed to make these. But
I don't know whether I'm supposed to or not.
Is
Can
he
I?
allowed to make a motion? Motion?
Allowed to.
Yeah.
I thought you wouldn't
It's
be allowed.
normally protocol is not to have the chair make the motion, but I find it as homework.
You got a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, got a second.
Mm-hmm. Discussion? No? Good? Anybody?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, you are free to begin work. It looks like a great addition.
Thank you. Yeah,
It'll
looking
surely
forward
help
to
with your
having
home
it
there.
done. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent, thank
You're
you. Next up, we have 1361 Rivermont Avenue.
This is a great.
Hello there. Hi, Jay.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Claiborne. I own 1361 Rivermont Avenue. I'm proposing to, number one, demolish and rebuild the garage that was damaged by a tree when my neighbor's tree fell on my house on the garage last year. It did considerable damage to the garage. I had Gary Loomis, engineer, come out and look at it. It has broken rafters. It's been knocked somewhat off the foundation. My proposal is to demolish the garage and rebuild it with new and reclaimed materials from the present garage. and build it back at the same size and dimensions, with newer windows, upgraded lighting, and make the garage a functional facility again, or functional garage again. As it stands right now, the damage that is done to the garage, because I have a new deck, it's continuing to kind of slide over, and it's going to impact my deck that I had replaced last year. And there is no way to functionally push the garage back up without, you can see the fence along my neighbor's property. There's no way for them to brace it and push the garage back up. To do so was going to cause considerable more damage, because what's not seen is the inside is lined in brick. Water came to my house in 1901, but it predates that, according to the Jones Library. So there's no conceivable way, and I brought Mr. Blunt here as well, has looked at the possibility of demolishing and rebuilding the garage and making it functional. My proposal is to add lighting, security lighting to the front and to the back, and basically keep it back to the original. Those are not the original doors. I actually have the original doors in my basement, but it would be the bifold doors, possibly going back if we can find them, to put them back using the window style that they have in there currently, and just making it, taking the garage back to the exact size again, just not having it in a condition where it's going to further deteriorate and then impact the deck. Mm-hmm. And then paint it according to the colors that I'm hoping will be approved for the house. And I'm waiting on an estimate from Charles Schrader to what it's going to cost to do both, pending approval of the garage demolition and rebuild.
You said you had the original doors?
They're in the basement. They're bifold garage doors, so I'm assuming that they're the original garage doors, because they have pull chains that go to them, and they can be, I'm sure, rehung. They seem to be in very good condition. But when I bought the house, those doors were on there since the tree hit the garage, and it's tarped right now on the top, but it's 2.5 inches, I think, off plumb, and it's continuing to slide over. But with it being lined in brick on the inside, you don't have the bracing area on my side with the deck, and you don't have it on the opposite side to try to push it back on its foundation. And then to do so would then impact all the bricking on the inside. So the proposal also is to take out all the brick when it is, if it's approved, and rebuilt, to use a brick again somewhere else in the property, maybe added as a decking along, or not decking, but bricking in part of the side. There's a little patio area or something, but use the reclaimed brick as well. Just recycle everything. Mm-hmm. That's recyclable.
Okay. I did visit the site. We typically try to find any means to restore a building if at all possible. However, I did talk to Gary Loomis. I happen to know him. And he gave me and normally I would have gone inside, but I talked to Gary, and he told me that it's very unusual. They have 2x4 wood studs, and in between the studs, they fill them with brick.
Interesting.
Also, it was built in two different. It was, right now this garage is 30 feet long, and he said there was a later addition. It was probably just a Model T size garage, and they extended it so it's whatever that size is, 10 by 30 or 12 by 30, something like that. Rotted. He told me that the studs were rotted. I said, do you mean the sill or the studs? He said, no, actual studs at the bottom are rotted, the sills are rotted. So he said it's in pretty dire strait. I think most of the issue with this building is through upheaval, more so than what the tree did. I think it's off kiltered because it's the freeze, the frost, the freeze thaw cycle. But it's neither here nor there. I mean, I would recommend that if you can document this building, in other words, get someone to draw the elevation for you. It is draftsman. I mean, you don't need to hire an architect. You can hire a draftsman. You know, I can give you a couple of names of someone who could do this. Maybe the front elevation and maybe a side, the long side. Document what you have there, which should also, well, you're going to need something to bring to the building department anyway. So if he documents what's there, and then you can maybe state what you're doing differently. In other words, an existing building versus what you're proposing. If the same scale, the same roof pitch, everything is there, you've got the same rafter tails exposed, that's all great. If you're going to change a door, however, which you're proposing to do, show a picture of the door, show how that's going to be incorporated into new design, so forth and so on.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Is this the information that he needs right here?
You don't have a picture of those doors by any slim chance, do you?
No, they're in the, I have asthma and my basement is a little bit draftier than I need to go in there. I've been a code once and respiratory distress once. I don't usually go in the back part of the, I redid all the front, Randy Parr did that for me, but back underneath the house where the garage doors are, at least the ones I think are the original garage doors, they're underneath the house in the back. But they've been there as long as since I bought the house.
Okay.
So, but they are garage doors, so I'm assuming that those are the original doors.
Okay.
I have a spec sheet, and I don't know, the specification sheet was one that was drawn up for what the proposal would be, the framing, the rough frame, the demolition, the new concrete doors, windows, exterior painting, and lighting. Is that what you like?
Is that from Masters?
No, that's from Flint.
Oh.
Because I had, because Mr. Loomis, let's see, Mr. Loomis, I do have the letter from Masters.
Yeah, I read the letter. No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, we, not necessarily, what we're more interested in here is basically what you're saying is you're going to replicate the building.
Yes.
So we want to document the existing building versus what you're doing, so that we can be assured that you are in fact duplicating that building.
Right.
As near or as close as possible.
Right.
If, for instance, you're going to use, let's say you've got 30% of the wood studs that are good and you want to reuse them, you could state that in the drawing. If you want to reuse the rafters existing, you can state that. If not, you can state that. So that basically, I guess what we're saying is we want to see a set of drawings for that building before and after. And again, it's something simple enough that a draftsman can do this for you.
Okay.
Flint may have one. If you need one, I can recommend a couple. Emmett's probably got a couple he knows.
And quite honestly, the biggie is that you're in the same footprint,
right?
Same length, width, height,
Yes.
and detailing. I'd even be comfortable with photographs that have dimensions laid over top of them. So that, and then your new drawing that you're going to get your building permit with. You know, if it's 12 feet wide, your new drawing is 12 feet wide. If it's 30 feet long, it's 30 feet long. If it's whatever that is, 9 foot to the eave, it's basically, I think a photographic documentation would be of the existing would be as useful.
You're going to have to get a set of drawings anyway for the building department, because I assume you probably have an issue with your foundation. It's probably not deep enough.
It's
probably none.
14 to 16 feet. Mr. Loomis said it wasn't frost heave because I had the foundation. He said it was code at the time. This happened April of last year, so I'm pushing 19 months with the damage done. And where it started to come apart was at the back where the tree impacted it. And that's where, and in the front, there is some root damage at the front from where not the magnolia, but there's a pine tree in back of that. And those roots are what kind of buckled the front. And he said that's what he thought caused the doors to drop. But the back was where it was.
You're much too close to the grade in the back portion on that, I think a little bit of the side. So when you do new drawings, you should reflect that, reflect the grade, and, your foundation's gonna probably have to be a little higher, which would be a change from what you have here, but a change that's necessary.
I think that was in the proposal too, for a new foundation
Yeah.
to code.
Yeah.
That was in his specifications here for, yes, new foundation, the new slabs and existing foundations that was not up to code, it was back in the day, and install new foundation to code requirements. So that
Do you have
happened.
enough of the siding that you can do a good bit of the siding?
Actually, I think I do. Randy Park, when I was having the new siding put down the back of the house, he put in red cedar, and he said that he wanted at one time to take some of the siding off the garage if I didn't need it. He said I had a lot of good wood on there, so all the wood I can salvage, I want to use again.
Good.
I do want to keep as
Yeah,
much
this
as I
old
can.
stuff is good, actually.
Yes.
You should-
When I
Unless
have,
it's sitting on the ground like, like a part of it.
yeah, but there is a foundation. There is he measured, and it's between 12 and 14 inches of concrete underneath there.
Wow.
And so there is a good bit. So he said that wasn't frosty. The only other change.
It might have been all those bricks that they put in between the stuff.
I wouldn't. It is. God, is it weird?
Anyway, so how would we handle this? Table it until she...
So would the commission want to see the drawings and or the photo documentation
Yeah.
prior to approving a demolition?
Well, I think we
Or
could-
would you be comfortable approving
I'm
it
comfortable-
contingent on that being submitted? That puts a lot on
Yeah.
me to know that I've gotten what you guys want.
I almost have to have a garage, so if that thing comes, which I don't want it to turn on my deck, I just got that thing up. I want a garage, the functionality of that garage as it is right now is twofold. One part of it, the back, we have a lot of things that are stored in there, because my brother, he cuts my grass, so he stores his lawn equipment and stuff in there. But the back half of it, if it is demolished and then rebuilt, the back half will have all the new lighting, and we're going to use part of that for woodwork. Because my son and I do a lot of woodwork, we build a lot of things. And so that would give me an opportunity to put the cabinets and stuff in there, and the saws and stuff that we already have.
I think approval contingent on the new drawing being reviewed administratively to replicate the existing.
I agree. I think it's replacing in
Yeah, I don't
kind
think you need to
essentially
come
is
back
what they're
here.
trying to do. If you view it as replacing in kind, then you can approve it without her having to wait to come back here.
The replacement, yes. I'm a little nervous about issuing a demo permit before we document before we get what you guys need for documentation of what's there.
My concern about waiting is continuing to slide with all the water and everything else and all the rain we've had of late. It's really getting close to my deck, and that is a concern for me.
I'll move that we approve the demolition based on the danger of collapse. Rebuilding I would like we would like to see the existing building document, well, let me back this up. I move that we document the existing building before demolition. Once you have that documented, then we approve the demolition. And I think once she gives you the documentation of the existing building, we don't need the new drawings, just the documentation of the building. Once we get that, then I think administratively, it can be approved for demolition. The new structure, I think we would like for you to come back to the board, the commission, to get that approved so we can see the existing documentation for us to do. Does that suit you?
Yes, that'll be fine. Yeah, because that was my concern. The more water and rain, the weaker the structure gets, and the more it's going to impact the deck there. And the only other change I'm going to make is they're going to move my oil tank that's underneath the deck right now. They're going to move that to the side. I'm having a new boiler put in. My boiler went out back in March, and they're taking out the 800 and almost 900-pound boiler and putting in a 1,000-pound boiler. And they said that oil tank needs to be moved, so it'll probably be moved around to the side. And so it won't be underneath the deck, because if it falls over there, that's the only concern I have. Other than that, this is the garage could impact the deck, but that tank, I certainly wouldn't want oil or something else leaking if it gives.
Are you gonna use that for automobile or just
And
woodworking?
it's big enough, I can have woodworking in the back and a car in the front. So it'd be, it's more.
It must be tight. How wide is that?
It's probably, I think, on here, it was right at 10 feet.
Wow.
Rough claim 10 by 30.
Call in the sunroof.
10 by 30. One of them.
You might not get a Suburban in there, but maybe a small.
I have a Mazda pickup. It'll fit in.
Yeah.
Are you adding any windows or doors in the new design?
I would like to keep the current windows. My neighbor whose tree it was. The people that own the house prior to them coming in use my windows for target practice, so there's tons of bullet holes in there. So I would like to be able to put back windows that.
And see, so that's what we like to see for the documentation. What's there, just like you saw prior to yours. They have vinyl windows. This is what we're replacing with. You can show the same thing here. We have a bullet-ridden window. You want to repair that and put it back, or you want to put a new window. But I guess you're saying you want to reuse the system.
I want to reuse as much of the siding. Everything else is too dilapidated to use. Like the doors, there's no way to sell to save those doors. But those doors were homemade doors. There's no way, those were not professional doors at all. They just looks like big pieces of plywood to me that have the 2x4 around the outside and a 2x4 bed across the back. And so those couldn't be original garage doors. I've never seen one. My dad owned a construction company. I've never seen doors like that for a garage. But on the side, there's a window to the side. There's one at the back, one on the side, and a door. I do want to keep the door as it stands right now is bricked on the inside, so you couldn't open that door and do it anyway. I would like to be able to use that door for access and egress from the opposite end of the deck. So you come out from under the house, you be able to go into the garage in the work area, and then keep the front open so that I could use it. And if the doors, what I perceive to be garage doors underneath, if those are indeed the original garage doors, if those cannot be saved, doors that are just like it, because they're bifold, and I think they would be inferior with the house.
Yeah, we'll need to see those too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Just show all that on the plan and
Okay.
for the new building.
Right.
And take lots of pictures documenting this one.
Yes.
Okay.
There's been lots of pictures since that tree hit this thing. It took, from the time the tree hit it in April of last year to the time they were able to get someone to get the tree off, it was October. So it laid on top of there that long. And then I had called 5 different tree companies here locally in Virginia, Ray's, Masters Touch, Trees and More. I called a company out of Hicks or Briggs out of Madison Heights, and they were all slammed. They couldn't get anybody. So what my insurance company did was they called Timber Warriors out of Missouri. They had just come back from doing the hurricane in Texas, and they came up and got the tree off the top of the roof. What? They told me it would be January before they could get the tree. So the Timber Warriors came up from Missouri, and they got the tree. So it's been from April of last year.
Your motion's still good?
So the demo permit could be approved contingent on receiving drawings documenting the existing conditions.
Correct.
Okay.
That would then be used for designing
Reconstruction.
the new structure. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further questions, comments, discussion?
Question. This is just me getting up to speed. So we're going to let her take it down. Is there in that a requirement to rebuild? Because we're allowing her to take it down. In the wording I'm hearing, there's no requirement to rebuild. We would like her to submit plans to rebuild, but there's no requirement.
Well, I think in your application you said you was going to.
I get that too. It's a desire, but shouldn't it be a requirement? If we're going to let you take this down, you are required to put this back? Maybe I'm getting wrapped around the axle. I'm just trying to get up to speed.
You're probably right. So can we add that to my motion that?
You guys can add whatever you want.
Should I make
It would be difficult to force a citizen to build a shed. But
Well,
I
her-
understand the concern. This shed dates to 1901. It's the same age as the house.
Right,
You're
and I
removing
understand
a
it needing to
historic
come
asset.
down before
Yep.
it takes out her deck, but we want to cover both sides, right?
Well, her certificate of appropriateness includes the demolition and reconstruction of a garage. So if she doesn't rebuild it, then she would be in violation of her COA. I don't know what the
It
recourse
depends
for
on
that
how
would
that
be.
motion is worded and approved.
Okay.
So you need to amend your motion.
You would have to amend it, I guess, to add that in there, I guess.
I mean, amend
You might want to assign a time frame then,
for,
rebuilding.
when did you plan on rebuilding?
Well, with the winter upon us now and all of this other destruction, I think the COA initially said a year, and it's going to be contingent now on weather and getting people to take it down. And then, because there's going to be two parts, everything inside's going to have to be stored, so I'm going to have to get a pod or something like that in the yard. And I think they said they would bring a dumpster for all of the material, safe stuff I'm going to be keeping. And so, the probably as it stands right now, with us being close to the winter season, I can't honestly say what I would expect the
That's
timeframe
fine.
to be.
Let me, I figured out how to do this. I move that the COA application be approved for demolition and rebuilding, contingent upon the documentation of the existing building being submitted prior to demolition, which can be administratively approved. We also require a set of architectural drawings for the new building that will duplicate or closely duplicate the existing prior to construction.
And then
Second.
I have one question for you, President. As it stands right now, there's no security lights on the front of the building, and there are none on the back. And that was another part of my proposal.
Yeah, you show all that on the drawings.
Okay, so I'll never
just
see that.
whoever does that, you show whatever you want, whatever you're proposing to do with lights you want, all that sort of thing.
I have a question, architectural drawings, but not necessarily by licensed architect.
Correct. Well, I mean, unless, I mean, you have to follow code. I don't know if the building inspector.
For the building
I wouldn't think the building inspector would require a set of stamp drawings for this. You might want to talk to the building inspector prior to this and tell him you want, you know, whoever you want to hire. If you don't want to hire an architect, just ask him if he require a stamp set of drawings for a garage that you're demolishing and rebuilding. If not, you know, there are people out there that probably a little less expensive.
All right, we had a motion and a second. There was a little more discussion. Any other discussion? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, what, say again?
Did we have a second for that?
We did.
Yeah.
Emmett did. Yes, then
There's a second part to this application.
you're ready to roll.
There's a second part to the application.
Okay.
It's the paint colors. They just didn't quite fit within the guidelines, and so it was
Oh,
not
painting
something
the
I was
house.
comfortable approving.
Right.
For a Queen Anne, here's what my guidelines tell me. Tan, red, green, brown for the body, and then trim and accents darker colors, dark olive, salmon red, and dark brown. So that doesn't give me a whole lot to work with, so.
I'm
Since
Queen Anne Georgian, so the colors I had pulled out of there, like the ones I had painted it before, were according to and I had gone to the Bear website and pulled up the colors for that. And so I used the colors that were used for a Georgian-style house. And so that's why I submitted.
Okay, I looked at it as a Queen Anne.
It's
not
Queen
sure.
Anne Georgia.
Kind of a hybrid.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you were coming to the meeting anyway, and there you gave me 3 options. And so instead of just saying, yeah, go do any of these 3 options, I figured I'd let the board weigh in on which ones were more appropriate.
And because
So
if
the-
I may speak before you look at the colors, I'm sorry. Because my house is a corner lot, it's a great big V-cornered lot right on Ruffner Rivermont, and I call it my ED. Anyway, because when you come into an area, and this is my own perception, when you come into an area, you set the tone for what people see or how they see your neighborhood, and you have to set the bar high. If it's drab and overlooked, people will just overlook everything. And Rivermont is a very, very beautiful area, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. And I submitted colors I thought would be visually impacting. I do have my favorite, because it is what you see when you start a particular block. You will see a house that catches your eye, and you'll either say wow or ugh. And because I am a corner lot, I wanted to set the bar high, and I do have a favorite on there. Some of them were kind of washed out, but they were going according to what they showed. That is my favorite. It is
That scheme there?
So it'd be the green for the body.
So what, that
Yeah,
cream,
you don't have shutters, so.
No.
so the cream is the body?
The gray is the body, and those were the trim colors. The trim that would be around the windows would be the wine. It would be the gray, the wine color, which is a blush.
Okay,
And
wait a
then
minute. Okay,
there's
wait,
2
wait.
different accent colors on the windows right now. I have 3 colors on the window.
Okay, let's start. What's that big gray thing?
The gray would be the.
Oh, that's
light
just the side of the screen.
Oh.
That's not,
Yeah, the
that's
four
not
on
a
that.
color.
What?
That's not part of
Oh,
it.
that's not a color?
That's just the side of the computer. That's the computer over there. You're looking at this,
So that,
the gray
where
block
the
over
little
here.
hand is, that's the body?
That's a green.
That's, what color is that?
It's a green.
That's green?
Well, I pass.
It says it's a green.
Beige to me.
Oh, I think I have
Cream.
the colors. Yep. Oh, that's these one. I'm sorry. I thought
I think this is the one that was your favorite, and these 4.
Okay.
And that was the first.
Gotta put the light back on now.
So these are the favorite.
So that
Here it is, too.
pale ivy, that's what the
Because I
body
have
would be?
spindles down all
We'll
around.
pass it. And
Well,
then
then
the
I go.
plum,
Need to
the house.
accent around, because there's 2 colors around the door. The door itself is blue right now. It's called Atlantis blue. And then granite boulder, because they told me initially I had to have my porch battleship gray, so it's the battleship gray. Granite boulder around the door frame. The Atlantis blue was the original the color I had the door painted before, and Vermont cream were the white or the spindle colors.
so
And-
the plum color would be the lighter one?
Right. And then the gray would be the body of the porch, would be the body of the house. The cream color, the greenish color would be the spindles and that sort of thing. And then the other accent would be the plum.
Oh, wait, okay, so the rain master, which is the gray. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
if you wanna.
Mhm.
Well, gateway gray is on
In fact,
there.
I'll write them on here. So this one is the body?
Yes, that would be the house. And then this would be the trim, this would be the accent.
Okay, this is body. This one is what?
Trim.
Trim.
And then that would be the visual, like this. It would be the around the
But it's
window.
this one, right?
Right, that would be, the plum would be around the window. And it was a choice about that blue, whether or not I would have to go with the blue or the plum color, so I just threw that one in there, to go with the blue or the plum.
I'll tell you what, these houses are always kind of difficult with these colors. You know what would be a good idea? If you could paint a sample on the house.
Okay.
You know, do just like, you could do like to the left of your door, and you know, you could do a piece of the trim on the door, a little siding. Like, in other words, if you're trimmed, see the trim to the right of the corner of the house, you could paint that, or maybe a spindles, or a couple, you know, this color, which, you know, then paint the body, and then paint whatever the door color is going to be. And if you wanted to, you could do actually for your own benefit, do both of them for yourself. You know, just get little quartz and do two, you know, you could do one.
Randy Parr's gonna take off that porch anyway, because it's starting to bubble.
Randy's a good man. Yes, you might want to do, you know, do this sample to the left, maybe this sample to the right, and because it'll help you. You may decide, well, you know, this is actually my favorite after all.
Okay.
You know, thinking that this one may be. So
Is the intent the window sashes, the double hung that goes up and down, are they gonna stay white?
No, they will be the this one, the greenish.
The ivy?
Yeah,
But what's the trim around the window?
that would be the plum.
The plum, okay.
So the window sashes, you got the actual trim. So what about the sashes themselves?
They would have the,
The green.
They'd be
Okay.
the light.
Ivy.
You definitely want those to be the lighter.
yeah, with the not less than the front.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might, for your own benefit, because these are very bold colors, and you know, what you see here and what it looks like when you put it on the house, sometimes are very different. And so, unless you're doing very, like, you know, just gray and something, you know, if you were doing these two, you may not have to, but if you're gonna do these, I'd recommend, if you just do a little sample,
They're good
and
in front,
then,
Ms. Clayton.
Oh.
They're nice.
and then I'm the advocate for your house, I guess, right? So that could I approve that? No.
Administrative.
Who has to approve it?
I could approve it administratively if it fits within the guidelines, or it could come back to you guys for approval.
Okay, so if she does a little sample, how would that get approved?
I could approve it administratively if you tell me it fits within the guidelines,
Okay,
or it can come back to HPC for a full approval.
so I could go look at it and I could come back to you and say, I think it looks fine, and, okay, so does that sound?
Yeah.
fine?
Yeah. Somewhere where you can get those colors close to one another. You can see how they play off of each other.
And you don't have to do all three, if you want to do your favorite one only, that's fine, you know, just do one if you want. That'd
And
be
then,
perfectly fine.
then Ann would just let us know when they're ready for viewing. We can take a peek.
And then just call you back. You're Miss Nigel? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mention. Okay, and then call you back and then have them come out and take a peek.
Yep, just let me know once it's taken.
Because like you say, it is kind of right in the beginning, so you want it to look right. So that's the best way to do it.
I was told years ago that houses that get a lot of attention are the least likely to be broken into. The houses that are kind of flawed are the ones that no one pays any attention to. So if there's something amiss, no one pays it any attention. Houses that are visually appealing, when they look at them over and over again, when someone goes by, they say, that doesn't look right, that normally isn't like that. And so it draws more attention. And this is the corner lot, and everybody sees it as you go down the street. And it needs to set the bar high. And my other neighbors are really stepping up to the plate, and they're doing a lot of work with their house, and I'm going to keep up with the Joneses, the Johnsons, the Smiths, and everybody
You
else.
wanna
So
Make
it's
a
beautiful
motion
house.
regarding
It's really
the
cool.
paint aspect.
Paint, okay, I move that I move that, how are we going to do that?
No, I don't think you need to make a motion on that one.
Okay.
No?
It could be an administrative approval.
Okay, so we can just,
We're just gonna.
If you don't feel comfortable, then it'll come back.
Yeah.
Because it was it not part of the original COA?
It was part
It was
of
on the same one?
application, yeah.
Okay.
But technically, paint can be administratively
Okay,
approved.
that's fine then. Very good. Well, we'll look forward to taking a look at the sample.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claiborne.
I
Mr.
appreciate
Flint,
it.
thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here.
Thanks, Beth.
Let's see, that concluded new business, and then we have another property that's coming back to the table for 123 Cabell Street.
So this one, someone needs to make a motion to bring it back
Oh.
before the HPC.
Please, somebody motion
be heard
to
again.
revive the discussion on this COA.
I move to revive the discussion on the COA application for 317.
123.
123.
123 Cabell Street. No, 123.
Hello, everyone. Victor Appel. Nice to see you all again.
Good to see you,
Sorry
sir.
I missed you two when you visited the property. I was driving from Roanoke, so it's a bit of a drive.
Yeah.
Today I had to help a CHP pull a tree off the freeway.
Oh,
It was blocking one of the lanes.
nice day. Could be a lot worse.
Could have been, yes. I haven't been over to the house in a couple days. I want to see how much water is inside again.
Eesh.
But that's a whole separate issue.
All
It's
right.
interesting that's green there because the houses on Zillow from a couple years back, it was actually blue.
Oh.
And some of the edges of the back of the house are still blue. So it's going to have to figure out what color we're going to paint it once in a year or two.
I think all commissioners were able to go by and take a look at the property and meet with the owner, contractor, project manager, or some combination thereof. So we'll just open up for discussion at this point. This is obviously, for the record, regarding window replacement request for 123 Cabell Street.
Okay. And the original reasoning, well, you didn't think the windows were restorable? What was the original reasoning why you didn't want to restore them?
Yeah, I was told by the contractor those windows were in really bad shape. That it was going to be very difficult to repair them, that it would have been basically complete rebuilds of most of those windows. So I was going to be putting effectively new windows in. And I would rather put in, if I'm going to go to that extent, windows that are double pane, that from the street they'll look just like that.
All right.
This house was falling down. I want a house that I can live in, that's not leaking like a sieve. Rebuilding the existing windows, it was going to be more than just repair. It was going to be a complete rebuild on most of the windows you see there.
What do you mean by complete rebuild?
That all the sashes were rotted, the frames were rotted, they were out of plumb, they weren't square anymore, so they were going to have to completely re-square the windows. The upper left one, the only one that's not open that looks like it's in good shape, that's the one we brought last time. The only thing holding it together was the paint on it, the 4 layers of paint, and it broke just from vibration. So these windows in the center top, all water damage, all rotted out. That sill's got a metal plate on it. The whole bottom of it and sides are rotted on those windows.
Well, the sill is a whole different story than the window
And
itself.
the window itself, that you see there in that last picture that's up, that whole bottom part is rotted away.
Okay. Okay, let's take a look at, let's look at this, these pictures again, the previous. Yeah. So what are those, what are we, can we start from the beginning with the old ones? It's just so you can explain what we're looking at? Why, like for instance, what is that one? What are we looking at here? Why is this picture taken?
We were looking at the distance around it, so that when we put in the replacement window that I brought last time for a demo, we would see that the window's going to match. It'll look the same from the street. That was the intent.
Okay. And the next one?
Because this is the exterior. You're seeing what it looks like.
Can you see that window that's open? Can you zoom up on that thing? No, probably not.
I think you have a picture that's closer of that window. There it is.
Hold on. I took a picture today.
A little baby in there too. What was that?
It's not open. Oh, yeah. So this was actually this morning. I just went by to get a look at it.
That one on the top right is the one that had the metal plate in it,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, hence the rust coming down.
I think they might have even tried to put it. Yeah, that's because of the rust in there, yeah.
Mhm.
And that whole right-hand corner, all the way halfway up, is just rotted away on the inside of it.
Mhm.
And all the windows were nailed shut or screwed shut, so all the frames are split or cracked. Every window, nailed or glued shut, or screwed. I mean, it was bad. I mean, they're just, all the frames have been damaged.
I wish you were there when I went because I didn't see any of this. I actually asked your contractor to show me the worst windows.
That's odd, because when I showed up, I was told that you walked in, looked at one window, and walked out.
Well, I told him to show me. No, I looked at more.
Oh, that's not true.
No.
We were there 20 minutes or
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. And now I didn't look at that particular one upstairs, but I looked at all the ones downstairs. And let's look at, let's just go through these.
Yeah.
You get a whole bunch of them. Where are these pictures from?
I'm not certain.
Computer issues now.
They got teeny tiny.
And now it's not zooming.
Oh.
Give me just a minute.
I will say I'm not a pro at restoring windows. Emmett and I spent, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Lifsey and I spent an hour inside the sweat box, if you will. It was very, very hot in there that day. And we actually, I felt like we looked at every single window except for maybe the ones that are flat on the back of the house that look into the backyard. And I don't know, my perception was that they were, for the most part, I mean, just heavily damaged. Again, you know, I'm just adding my 2 cents. I don't know exactly to what extent all of them could be repaired. In addition to the framing, the new framing that was done to shore up every beam in the house, vertical and horizontal, has been sistered up with new lumber, and new framing has gone in around the windows, which of course would prohibit it at this stage unless you took all that out from putting in old functional windows with weights and all that sort of stuff. It would, I don't know.
And that was something
that was another issue. I don't know.
That was totally unnecessary for this house, what he did there, by ripping all those weights out.
Well, the builder disagrees because they went by international standards for building. They knew that this would become a requirement. The house was falling
He didn't
down.
know his code. I got it right here. This is Virginia Rehabilitation Code. Repairs to any portion of historic building or structure shall be permitted with original or like materials and original methods of construction, subject to the provisions of this chapter. So the headers were not required. They wouldn't be required because of the balloon framing. You know, the codes now tell you have to have headers because of the type of framing, but here you didn't need it. And right there in that code, and I even spoke to the building inspector about this. So I know he didn't have to do that. So he gave you information that was incorrect. Well, let me ask you this. I brought a contractor out there, well-known contractor in Lynchburg, who restores windows. He told me $800 he could restore a window. Would you be willing to let him do a window to see how it would look, how it would feel, to satisfy you, to satisfy us? Well,
Absolutely not.
okay.
Absolutely not.
Why?
I don't want single pane windows if possible. I don't want.
You can have single pane windows
Storms?
with storm windows.
I can't have storm windows on the bedrooms
Why?
because you have to have an egress.
That storm windows are operable.
So now it's $800 to repair the window plus whatever it costs for a storm.
Well, storm windows are relatively inexpensive. I mean, what's the new Marvin window copy, or whatever, I forgot what.
$700 for that window.
How much?
$700.
Okay.
I'm worried about stuff like that.
Plus installation?
Yes.
You're worried about, well, that would be restored, this right here.
That frame.
I mean, here's
splitting.
what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with three things. We're dealing with sustainability. We're dealing with what's very popular, green building, and we're dealing with a historic structure. Okay, so let's take the first one, sustainability. These windows have been in this house for over 100 years. They're still there. They're heart pine. You have to go through extreme conditions to destroy these wood windows. Admittedly, some of them have been.
Most of them have been.
Bottom sills, bottom rails of your windows can be replaced.
It's more on the bottom, just bottom, sides.
I mean,
where they've been split and drilled through and screwed through.
So you'd have to have an assessment, but again, they've been there. If you restored these windows properly, they would be there for another 100 years, properly maintained. You put a new window, the ones you're proposing, they have a 30-year lifespan. So not only are you taking hard pine windows that you can't even buy anymore, you're throwing these away in the landfill, probably.
I won't throw them away.
Well,
I gotta enclose the back
they're sort of,
patio.
they're sort of useless unless you find the same size windows.
Actually,
But-
I plan to enclose the enclosed porch right now.
But the point
It's
is,
completely rotted away, and I need new windows for that area to enclose it.
the new windows, you'd have to throw them away in 30 years, put new ones in again.
That's a pretty big assumption.
It's not an assumption,
You're
it's a
assuming
fact.
that these windows, which will have how big a warranty? You're assuming that they'll last.
I just
100
said,
years.
if they're properly maintained, they will last you. There's no reason why they wouldn't.
But and the brand new ones are going to fail exactly in 30 years.
The,
even properly
the
maintained.
the argon gas has a 30-year lifespan.
Right, then it becomes double pane.
There's
on
two
argon.
architects here. I mean, I got
I'm not arguing
commissioner.
that. I'm just saying that the argon part of it might go away, but it's still going to be double pane. And it's better than the single.
Well, then you won't be able to see through them. They fog up, and then you have to replace them.
I think the problem was that from the get-go, the approach on the renovation of the house has not been from the viewpoint of the historic district. I mean, it's very clear that the construction was more of a new construction approach. From the standpoint of the framing that Commissioner Morris was talking about, a contractor that was attuned to a historic structure would have understood the existing conditions and would have approached it differently. They wouldn't have had to put in all the jack studs and the headers that were put in. That was a cost that didn't have to happen. I mean, when our purview is the exterior of the house. But when we visited and we walk in the front door, it's clear that the approach to the house was more of a new construction, a suburban, if you will. I mean, the center stair that is so prominent in a historic house like this is gone and rebuilt in a different format. The layout of the rooms are different. The mantles are gone. And I think the windows are just the next step of that whole process of approach that is different than a historic district, historic house. And this house is across the street from one of the most prominent museum houses in town, if not the, and is therefore very important.
And I'd like it to look the same without falling down, because it was falling down. I mean, I originally planned to move in 3 months after going in, getting just a few of these windows repaired. It wasn't until I saw water coming in that we went to stud and then saw the fire damage, a roof that was 4 inches down, walls that were unsupported and swinging free. I mean, the amount of extensive damage to this house forced us to go that one. The beautiful stairwell that we wanted to keep, the beams supporting it were actually going through the floor, and the whole thing was coming off the wall. So the amount of renovation to repair that, because the upper store was 3 inches different, the whole upper portion of that area was.
But again, the reality is it could have been.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure with enough money it could have been, but that was.
And it's a historic house in a historic district, and it has to have a different mentality and a different approach than that of new construction, than that of a suburban house. It's just that it's a different animal when it lives in the historic district.
I want it to look the same. The windows we're proposing look identical to these windows.
But
you got to step away. You're missing the point of the historic district, historic house, historic materials. That's the point. If what is said is that it's in bad shape and I want to replace it, is taken to heart, then every historic house in all the historic districts in Lynchburg and in the country for that matter we could walk in and say, well, that's old. I can put something that's newer and better in place of it.
I would love to keep them.
You can. The reality is you can.
At what price, though?
Sir, let me just, I think Commissioner has said it very elegantly.
Do I need to just board it up there and leave it vacant?
No.
But see, you're totally opposed to having someone come in there and just restore one window so that
You're asking me to spend almost $1,000 on one window that I might or might not like because of your personal
No,
desire.
it is not my
It's the city's guidelines.
It's to show you, because the reason I'm suggesting that is because you're very adamant about not doing that, and I'm here to,
I'm getting
look,
advice from other individuals who said that it's not going to be $800. It's going to be more like $2,000 per window.
Well, I actually had a price from this. I mean, albeit we didn't go inside the house, but he, I had plenty of pictures to show him of that window. So he's, he understands it. He's been through it before. I've been through it. I mean, I speak to you with experience. It took a long time to get my windows restored. They were in much, much worse condition than your windows. And I personally did them. I restored them. Now, would it have cost a lot of money to restore them if I didn't do it? Probably. But when you buy a house in a historic district, you take on that responsibility.
To maintain the look of the historic district.
And
with
material.
The look and the material.
And
with the
materials
original
when possible.
materials. With the original
So I'm
materials.
putting wood windows in.
Correct.
I'm putting the same look and wood windows into this space.
But what you're
So
saying
I'm
is
keeping
every.
the look and the materials.
May I? What you're saying, though, is that every house in the historic district can come in and sit in the chair like you are and say, I want a more new window that is more functional in terms of his energy conservation, and therefore I get to do it.
I'm not
It's-
asking for that. I'm saying these windows are destroyed from neglect, water damage and neglect and abuse with nails. And I would like to put in windows that match the look and the materials, but are going to last long enough that I can own this house for a long time without worry about windows breaking, water coming in, and destroying the house further.
I think what we're saying, though, is that these windows can be made functional. They are definitely damaged. Rick and I took a lot of pictures, scrapes and paint, but heart pine lasts forever. I don't think you can destroy it.
The proper way, if your contractor understood historic structures and windows, the proper way for, let's just say, as an architect, if I went in your house and you said, okay, what do we do with the windows? And we have to restore them. Then what you do is I would go in there and document window number 1, 2, list all the windows, just like you would do in a normal window schedule for new windows. And I would list what each window needed repair-wise. This one has a bottom rail that, a lot of the windows in your house, as a matter of fact, don't have to be, if you have some rot on a side rail, that doesn't have to be replaced. There are products. Abatron is one. It's like a Bondo. You've seen that with cars, but it's for wood. I used a lot of that on my house. I jokingly say that I'm going to change the name from Rivermont to the Abatron house. I've used so much of that, but it's a great material, and it restores wood very beautifully. When you have rotted out wood, it's a little process to it, but it doesn't. It's not rocket science. A contractor can do that.
Sounds very labor intensive, which is expensive.
It's actually not that labor intensive. Depending on, of course, if it's a real, the most labor intensive things I had in my house were the sills that were rotted out. Some sills I actually had to replace, but other sills that were still, you would think I'd have to replace, I actually dug everything out and cleaned them all out, and I used this product, and have not had one single problem. It comes out like brand new, and it's an alternative way to save what's there. But that would have been the proper way to assess your windows that your contractor could have done. He could have come in with a window schedule, say, okay, this window needs this one needs that, and then they say, okay, this bottom rail, it's too far gone, that needs to be replaced. And even then, they just, that's the beauty of a wood window. You can take the parts off, put new parts in. And you can use you can use hard pine. You can still get old hard pine, and I have a contractor that still uses old hard pine to repair old hard pine windows. But then he might have a top rail that can be repaired with Abertron, something like that. And that's the way you do it. Yeah, does it get costly? It may be costly, but that's the cost is not our concern. When someone buys a historic house, they take that on. They have to understand that these old houses may cost a little more than a new house. You can't look at it as new construction because it isn't. And there are guidelines to follow in a historic neighborhood. And that's why we're here, to make sure those guidelines are followed. And if, again, I've done this. I've seen windows restored. I've seen them in much worse condition than yours restored. And there is just no reason that they can't be done in your house. The windows are still good. You say they're horrible. I say they're still good. I think most of the commissioners on here who viewed them would agree to that, if they're familiar with old houses.
Commissioner Archiaga, you had a comment, it looked like?
So this is the one I've struggled with the most. What is a window that's deteriorated beyond repair? We've said that if money is not an obstacle, most anything could be repaired. So at what point is it just always no? I don't think that's the right answer.
Sometimes you'll find a window, I've been on projects where, we've been restoring old warehouses, for instance. And no one's, they've been abandoned for years and years and years. The windows hardly have paint left on, all the glass is smashed out, all the little buttons have been broken. The top, the bottom rail is completely rotted out. The top rail's fallen in. The side is rotted. It's just such a mess.
His are a mixed bag. Some are better than others. Some are pretty far gone.
But these are solid. See, a lot of times the windows that can't be replaced when there's no paint on them whatsoever, and you start to see that you can actually, you've seen that with old wood windows. You can see the grain, and because it's just dried out to the point where it's just been so neglected and so abused. Neglected more than abused.
But then you just, per your words, you just replace it with a new piece of pine and you're all good.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that in a case like that, if you're going to replace 100% of the window or 90% of the window, in that case, yes, you can say that window could be replaced.
Half the windows in the front, I'm expecting to have to replace 75% of those windows.
Again,
upstairs,
unless I'm missing
corner,
unless I'm missing something.
Bedroom, all three of those windows are at least 75% rotted. And that sample we brought in was from a window that looked good, and it completely came apart. It looked good. It was painted. You couldn't tell. It broke.
Well, we came there three different times, right? There was two, and two, right? Mm-hmm. So, were you there to meet any of us?
I met him.
Everybody but you two.
He was there when we were there.
Okay, so, I mean, so you saw that.
So we're.
The picture I have.
I didn't see.
I did expanding foam in one window because I could reach out of it. That means that rail and the bottom rail are both rotted away to nothing. That have to be replaced. So that's a quarter of that window already. And the other corner was just as bad. So where do I draw the line? when it's over 50% that I have to replace all the wood on the window? Is it 75? Where's your number that says this window is not repairable?
Well, I can't
It has
answer
to
the
be
question
replaced?
because I would actually have to see, because I'm not looking at what you're talking about, so I may disagree with what you're
Right.
saying.
Right back to there.
Okay, what do we look at that little rotted piece?
Yeah, that's expanding foam. I can actually stick my whole hand through
That right there
plus-
could probably be repaired with Avatron.
But it's rotted all the way up where you see it, like the paint missing on the side. That's all rot all the way up on that side and across the entire board. That's the board we ended up bringing over that came apart. So all that bottom board has to be completely replaced. What do you call them? Sills, or what's the bottom board called?
Bottom rail.
Bottom rail and then the side rail. So that's at least two. The other side looked as bad. It just didn't have a hole that birds could fly in.
Well, I mean, from this picture, I don't see any rot on that bottom rail, but, I mean, I just, it's not visible, so
Yeah, it was used as a bathroom, so it's all rotted across.
But, you showed two commissioners, and one commissioner happens to agree that they're restorable. So I don't know where we go from here.
Are you planning on, if I read the write-up correctly, the ones on the side and the rear, you don't need our sign-off? Are you replacing those regardless of which way we go?
No,
Yes.
sides and rear
They are.
require approval also.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rear does?
I'm sorry.
The side, windows on the side and the rear of the house require approval also.
I thought the rear did not need
They
approval.
could be approved, I think if you follow the guidelines say they could be approved for aluminum or replacements more readily. They still have to get approved.
Because when I was here last, it said that the rear windows, I could replace as needed.
Oh, did you guys make a motion last time on that?
They're not visible.
Visibility is not
Not
a
a-
standard for whether or
okay.
not it gets reviewed or not. The guidelines
Well,
specifically
okay.
say if something's not visible, maybe you could do a synthetic siding, like 920 Federal Street. But it needs to be approved on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Visibility is really difficult, especially for staff, because visible in the summer is different than visible in the winter. Or visible from the street, it might not be visible from the street, but it's visible from your neighbor.
That's one of the upstairs windows that we were seeing from the other side. It looks fine. You can see that whole rail is rotted. And both the side ones coming up, so that lower portion of the window is going to be 3/4 replaced. Sorry, repaired. Is that one that should be replaced, or is it because the upper half is still in maybe good condition?
I mean, there's been instances, I have had personally where I had to, yes, replace the whole bottom sash of a window because it was too far gone. There are other instances where I replaced the bottom, mostly the bottom sills is what you have an issue with. Sometimes it's the lower rail, bottom rail of the upper sash because of all the weight of the glass. Those have a tendency to sag and rot out. So a lot of times the most significant problem I had, and I think a lot of windows, is that bottom rail of the upper sash because of the weight more than anything, and the bottom rail of the lower sash because it's sitting down. A lot of times water gets up in the sill and it rots it out. So those are the ones that a lot of times have to be replaced.
I suspect, from what I've seen, every window in this house, the bottom rail will be replaced at a minimum.
To move this discussion along, I'd like to move that the COA be denied.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Is that for the entirety of the house? Are there any, and I guess my question is.
I think the motion is to not approve that the whole house gets new windows.
Yeah.
I think that.
And I guess, is there a point that as the homeowner, that you could bring in someone who has credentials in the historic district and dealing with historic windows and historic houses in historic districts that could do the survey that Commissioner Morris is talking about and say on a window-by-window basis that, you know, both sashes in this are rotten, 80% rotten. The sashes in this one are 10% rotten, so that there could be an understanding, both on our part and as well as your part, in that, you know, these are viable windows to be restored, as opposed to just a blanket statement that they're all bad, so that there could be a better understanding on your part as well as ours. Because I fully, again, I go back to the approach of the project from the start has been not from a historic district, historic house standpoint. And obviously that's where we sit because of the charge, the city regulations that we are sworn, literally sworn to uphold. So that from our standpoint, we can't just say, yeah, go ahead and pull everything out. It's against what we swore to do as commissioners for the city. I mean, it's not that we're being hard-headed, it's that we are following the code.
I would agree to do this. If Commissioner Lipsy agrees, he and I think, on this committee are the most qualified to assess these windows. I would be more than happy to meet you, and two of us can go, right?
Only two.
So if we went and met with you, and you can show us window by window, maybe we're wrong. Maybe they're worse than, you make it sound like they're worse than what we saw. And we make a further, we'll go with, this will be my third time.
Well, I'm a little anxious about that. From that standpoint, I mean, as commissioners, we are not providing architectural services to the community on a volunteer basis. We're doing this as a volunteer basis. And my point is that there are qualified contractors and subcontractors that approach historic houses in historic districts and historic windows in historic houses with a viable understanding of the materials and the repairability, the restoration format. And I think when you buy a house in a historic district, as you said earlier, it is an undertaking of a duty. You're notified when you buy, the house is listed in a historic district. You're notified that you just bought a house in a historic district. This is not it is?
This is not our primary approach. We assumed that we could repair the windows and the visual damage that we saw. We didn't know the extent of the damage and how many windows were so severely damaged that we were given the guidance that repair was not a viable option.
But again, I think your guidance is, we are not comfortable, we have not been convinced that the guidance is correct to date. I guess that's the bottom line is. I mean, when we look at the rest of the approach to the rest of the house, it's clear it's a different approach than here's a historic home that we're going to maintain every detail and everything we can, repairing from inside out sometimes. And that leads me as a commissioner, when I see the other things that have happened in the house, to want to question this more. And so what I'm suggesting is that convince us with someone other than who has been convincing so far, who knows windows in this type of situation, that if you bring in Mr. or Mrs. historic window expert and they say, here's a schedule of all 42 windows in the building, and 41 of them I would not try to restore then we will listen to that.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't been convinced that that is the case, that a number of the windows are not viable to be restored. I don't know what percentage of the total it is, and I might be willing to, I might be convinced that it's 82%. I don't know, but so far I haven't been convinced, and from the cursory look in the field, I haven't been convinced that these nice heart pine windows couldn't be restored. As Commissioner Marr says, I've done this for 30 years. I've seen worse and seen them restored, both in historic districts as well as historic tax credit projects. And I mean, once you go into the tax credit, it's the next level of oversight. And I think if we were in a tax credit project and you had to have a Department of Historic Resources review a level up from us, they would be asking the same thing, because those reviewers, with what we have seen, I think could say the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of historic fabric that's still in place and still viable. Prove to me that it's not. I mean, I had a contractor walk in with a piece of rotten window before in the Department of Historic Resources, and they looked at him and they said, "Don't try to play this game with us. Bring back a schedule of the windows and prove to us what is and isn't viable." And I think that's what we're saying here, is that right now we see a lot of viability in what's in place, and really would like to know that they are or aren't in condition that can be restored. Because I think we have viewpoints that say we think they can.
And we would like to also, if you decide to do that, it needs to be from someone who does restore windows. There's only one person I know of in Lynchburg who's qualified that, there may be more. But I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, unfortunately, the builder you're using may be very good with new construction, but he really doesn't understand historic restoration. So we want someone who understands restoration and has a record of restoring windows. That's the person we would listen to. I brought one out there. I can give you his name. He's an independent contractor. He's not an architect, but he's very knowledgeable in windows. And maybe once you listen to him, you'll agree with him. Maybe he'll come back and tell us, yeah, you're right. 90% of the windows are bad. 80% of the windows are bad. That's what we need.
I don't think the city of Lynchburg maintains any sort of website list of viable contractors and subs for historic districts.
So we have that pretty dated list.
Okay. I know Department of Historic
Yeah.
Resources used to do that. I haven't
Okay.
visited it lately. They have a list of, and they say on it, these people have put their names on it and deal with that. But I think the vast majority of those people would have it. If you wanted to go to a state list out of Richmond as opposed to just.
I would love to just talk to them. If I'm going to spend money on someone coming out to do that, I'd rather spend money on that, because that's something that needs to happen. If I don't replace the windows and I have to repair them, I'd rather do that money there than have someone replace just one or repair one, but then turn around and go, yeah, it's 75% bad.
Yeah, look at
And you guys go, okay,
look at the
go
big
ahead and
picture.
repair 'em all.
I think that's a very viable approach. Look at the big picture.
And sitting there, I'm like, oh, well, there was $1,000 off. Rip that window out, put a new one in. It's not my thing. We thought we'd move it. And the reason we've gone to where we are, we didn't expect to go stud. It was, once the inspector found aluminum wire being used, plumbing installed incorrectly, that interior of the house was divided into 4 apartments. There was a lot of handyman work that was done. The stairs that you're talking about that look beautiful, a handyman had gone in and put in new support posts on the inside. Half the pickets were gone. The railing was unsafe. I mean, it was, I've had people come in and look at the stud and go, why did they do that? Why did they cut through that?
There certainly is a range of
There was a certain amount of
poor conditions that one sees.
handyman that went in and just destroyed what was a beautiful home interior wise. And we had to get it at least not to fall down.
Can I call that question?
Please. You have a question?
No, I said, may I call the question to
Yeah.
call for a vote?
Thank you, yes. So, did you guys vote to deny?
So,
No, we haven't voted.
does anyone want to revise the?
Well, we can't table it again,
You
can
actually
we?
could.
Yeah, we can.
Would you like the number?
City
for the
code gives you
contract?
60 days from the first meeting, and we just counted days over here, so that would be October 18th. But the meeting is October
So
15th,
Sandy, you
so
could
it-
revise the table.
Okay, I
for-
will withdraw my motion and make a motion to table the request pending information from an authority on window restoration. Is that good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Tell me good, Chandler.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? Then we'll call for a vote on that to table to the October 15th meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, show that has passed.
He's
And
one of those guys you gotta keep calling sometimes. Typical contractor.
And you know, the
and Mr.
woman-
Pell, thank you.
The
Thank you.
woman
Appreciate it.
restoring Seven Hills School is working with somebody who's
Yeah.
restoring windows there.
Ah,
I don't know who he is.
I don't know who it was either.
what's her name?
She tried to
Combination of
catch
most of the
him.
windows in
Remember
the
at the
historic house
last
are being
meeting,
restored.
and he was
And
gone.
replacing the aluminum
Yep.
things that are out in the gym.
I'm trying to remember what her last name is.
Instead of
I can't remember, but Ann can.
Tip.
Is it possible, Commissioner, it's not Rowe anymore,
It's Horner.
was reminding us there's a window specialist that's working with the woman from Charlottesville who's doing the
2001.
Rivermont Avenue, the school renovation, and perhaps,
Just reach out to her and ask for that name.
Yeah, she said
Yeah.
she would give it to us.
Yeah,
yes.
And that they had used them before, I think.
yeah.
Because that architect is out of Richmond, if I'm remembering
Yeah.
correctly,
Yes.
and he talked about, it sounded almost like a design-build format, that they had a relationship. That they
Well,
had.
I don't know where he was from.
Yeah,
I think
I
he
don't know.
lives here.
Yeah,
I think she
that's
said
correct.
He lives here, but
He is
he's
local.
out of Richmond.
He's
And
local.
she tried to catch you at the last meeting to give you.
Yeah,
yeah.
as in, I expect to have a parking ticket.
It's after 4 o'clock.
That's after
Yeah,
40.
you might be okay.
Well, since till 6.
I'll have one. I'll have one too. If you.
It'll go around usually after.
Okay, well, we'll try to work to get that information for you as well, if we can coax that from her.
Move on this quickly in order to.
Absolutely. All right, excellent. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here, and we adjourn until the meeting October 15th.